When our new CFO arrived, he dismissed every established protocol and turned the finance department into his personal theater of flashy presentations. I sent him a joke report, fabricated numbers mimicking system errors, just to see if he'd actually read it. Not only did he approve it, he presented it directly to the board of directors. The next morning, the boardroom exploded, and his chair remained empty forever. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I've spent 15 years building an impeccable reputation in the unforgiving world of corporate finance. At 38, I'd survived 3 mergers, 2 hostile takeovers, and countless audit seasons at Silvercrest Capital without a single material error on my watch. The mahogany-paneled halls of our Chicago headquarters had become my second home, where the scent of leather portfolios mixed with burnt coffee at 2 a.m. during quarter-end closes. I'd earned my stripes the hard way, starting as a junior analyst fresh from Northwestern, working 100-hour weeks while my peers burned out or jumped ship to startups. But I loved the precision, the way numbers told stories that PR spin never could. In my corner office on the 32nd floor, surrounded by monitors displaying real-time market data, I'd built something rare in our cutthroat industry trust. That trust shattered the moment Ethan Cross walked through our doors. At 34, Ethan looked like he'd been assembled by a consulting firm's diversity algorithm, perfectly coiffed hair, designer suits that screamed new money, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Our CEO had poached him from a marketing role at a tech unicorn, seduced by buzzwords like financial innovation and disruptive analytics. "Ladies and gentlemen," our CEO announced that September morning, the conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows framing a Gray Lake, Michigan. "Meet your new CFO. Ethan brings a fresh perspective we desperately need." Fresh perspective. In finance, those words usually preceded disaster. Our first clash came within hours. I'd prepared my standard monthly variance analysis, 40 pages of meticulously documented discrepancies, risk assessments, and recommendations, the same format that had saved us from a 9-figure write-down just last year. Ethan flipped through it during our afternoon meeting, his expression growing more amused with each page. "Lauren, right?" He didn't wait for confirmation. "This is thorough. But don't you think it's a bit like driving while looking in the rearview mirror?" The conference room fell silent. Even the aggressive air conditioning seemed to pause. "These are forward-looking projections based on Excel spreadsheets that haven't evolved since the 90s. He slid the report back across the polished table. "We need to embrace automation, real-time dashboards, AI-driven insights. This," he gestured dismissively at my work, "is accounting archaeology." Someone snickered. Bradley from Treasury, always eager to align with power. I kept my voice steady, professional. "Our manual verification processes have prevented 17 material errors in the past quarter alone. The automated systems you're describing will free us from human error entirely." His smile widened, predatory. "I appreciate your dedication to tradition, Lauren, but Silvercrest hired me to modernize. Maybe HR can arrange some training sessions to help you adapt." The condescension dripped like acid. 15 years of expertise reduced to dedication to tradition. As the meeting dispersed, I gathered my rejected report, fingers steady despite the rage simmering beneath my composed exterior. Through the glass walls, I watched Ethan hold court with the younger analysts, his hands sketching shapes in the air, selling them dreams of a frictionless future. He had no idea what he'd just started. The dismantling of our financial controls happened with breathtaking speed. Within 2 weeks of his arrival, Ethan had convinced the CEO to streamline our reporting process. Gone were the 3-tier verification protocols I'd helped design. Gone were the manual spot checks that had caught a $50 million Forex error just last spring. "Efficiency is the enemy of redundancy," Ethan announced at the all-hands meeting, standing beneath a projected slide that read, "Finance 3.0. The younger staff ate it up, nodding along as he promised shorter hours and automated workflows. Why should brilliant minds like yours waste time double-checking what AI can verify in nanoseconds? I raised my hand from the back row. What about regulatory compliance the SEC requires? The SEC requires accuracy, not antiquated methods. His interruption was smooth, practiced. Our new dashboard system exceeds all regulatory standards. Real-time data. instant visualization, predictive modeling that makes traditional reporting look like cave paintings. The room chuckled. I lowered my hand, noting how he'd never actually answered my question. The changes rolled out like a Silicon Valley fever dream. Our tried and tested Excel models were replaced with a flashy web interface that looked like it belonged in a video game. Data flowed in through APIs, processed by black box algorithms that no one, including Ethan, fully understood. Just input your numbers here, he demonstrated during a training session, his laser pointer dancing across rainbow-colored charts. The system handles everything else. No more formula errors. No more version control issues. But how do we verify the underlying calculations? I pressed. He sighed theatrically. Lauren, I respect your experience, but this constant resistance to progress, it's not a good look. Maybe we should schedule a one-on-one with HR about change management. The threat hung in the air like the smell of ozone before a storm. Around me, colleagues shifted uncomfortably, suddenly fascinated by their laptops. The message was clear: adapt, or be labeled obsolete. But I wasn't the only one concerned. Janet from Risk Management cornered me by the elevators one evening. Her usual composure cracked. Lauren, the new system isn't flagging concentration risks. I tried to tell Ethan, but he suggested you needed training. I finished. She nodded miserably. It's like he's built a Ferrari with no brakes and convinced everyone that stopping is outdated. More cracks appeared daily. The system miscategorized derivatives, buried negative variances in nested submenus, and worst of all, automatically smoothed volatility in our trading portfolios to present a rosier picture. When Tom from Internal Audit tried to raise concerns, Ethan publicly questioned whether we even needed an internal audit function in the age of AI. The November board meeting loomed like an approaching hurricane. Ethan had promised to showcase our transformed financial architecture with a comprehensive presentation of Q3 results. He strutted through the office like a peacock, dropping hints about record-breaking metrics and revolutionary insights. You'll want to be there, Lauren, he told me one afternoon, leaning against my office doorframe with studied casualness. See how real innovation works. Maybe it'll inspire you to finally embrace the future. I looked up from my monitor, where I was documenting his system's latest failure to properly account for hedge effectiveness. I wouldn't miss it for the world. His smile faltered slightly at something in my tone, but his ego quickly reasserted itself. Good. Oh, and I'll need all department heads to submit their final reports through the new system by Thursday. No exceptions, no parallel Excel files. We're fully digital now. After he left, I stared at the screen for a long moment. No parallel files. No manual verification, no safety net. He'd just handed me the rope to hang him with, and he didn't even know it. That night, I worked until the city lights blurred together, crafting something special in the system he loved so much. If Ethan wanted to bypass all our controls, if he wanted to trust his digital baby blindly, then I'd give him exactly what he deserved. A report so obviously wrong that any competent CFO would spot it in seconds. The only question was Ethan Cross actually competent? I was betting my career that he wasn't. The key to surviving in corporate finance isn't revenge, it's documentation. After that humiliating meeting, I transformed into a silent archivist of Ethan's incompetence. Every evening, after the office emptied and the cleaning crew's vacuum hummed in distant corridors, I'd stay behind. My second monitor displayed Ethan's revolutionary dashboards while I methodically compared them against our source data. The discrepancies were staggering. His automated system rounded numbers with the sophistication of a child's calculator, dropping decimal places that represented millions in derivatives trading. I created a folder on my personal drive, encrypted and backed up to 3 separate clouds. I named it, In Case of Audit Apocalypse, my own private joke. Inside, subfolders multiplied like evidence in a federal case, rounding errors, ignored risk flags, unapproved changes to reporting standards. October 15th, 10:47 p.m. Ethan's system showed our emerging markets fund up 3.2%, actual calculation 2.7%, the difference, a $4.5 million overstatement. October 22nd, 2:15 a.m. The dashboard completely omitted a margin call warning on our commodities position. I screenshotted everything the system output, the real data, the timestamp showing Ethan's login approving the report for distribution. The coffee machine became my closest companion during those late nights, its bitter brew keeping me sharp as I built my arsenal. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the dark window's hollow eyes, determined set to my jaw. I looked like a woman possessed, and maybe I was. During daylight hours, I perfected the art of invisible compliance. In meetings, I nodded at Ethan's pronouncements, took notes on his visionary strategies, even smiled when he dismissed my concerns about liquidity ratios as pessimistic thinking from the old guard. My colleagues started avoiding me, interpreting my silence as defeat. Bradley from Treasury actually patted my shoulder one day, murmuring, "We all have to adapt, Lauren. Let them think I'd been broken." The most damning evidence came in early November. Ethan had overridden our risk management protocols to push through a real estate investment trust acquisition. When I'd flagged the concerning debt-to-equity ratios, he'd actually laughed and said, "Lauren, this is why marketing minds revolutionize finance. We see opportunity where accountants see fear." I documented every email, every dismissal, every moment he'd clicked approve without reading the underlying data. My folder grew to 847 files, screenshots, emails, PDF reports, recorded system logs, each file named with military precision, date, time, size, error type, impact value. One night, security found me asleep at my desk at 4 a.m., my screen still glowing with variance analyses. "Working late again, Ms. Mitchell?" the guard asked, concern creasing his weathered face. "Just ensuring accuracy," I replied, saving my files one more time. By Thanksgiving week, I had 3 months of irrefutable evidence. Ethan had cost Silvercrest approximately $23 million in unrealized losses through his negligence, though our board remained blissfully unaware thanks to his colorful charts and confident presentations. I sat in my office that Wednesday before the holiday, watching Ethan through the glass walls as he glad-handed his way through the corridors. He'd grown more arrogant with each passing week, convinced he'd neutralized the dinosaurs like me. Opening my encrypted folder one more time, I smiled a small, private expression that would have chilled anyone who truly knew me. He thought he'd won. He had no idea that every careless click, every dismissed warning, every mocking word had been preserved in digital amber, waiting for the perfect moment to fossilize his career. The trap was set. Now I just needed him to walk into it. The idea crystallized at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, fueled by my 5th cup of coffee and pure frustration. I'd just watched Ethan dismiss Janet's third attempt to flag a critical risk in our real estate portfolio, $180 million in commercial properties, with balloon payments coming due. His response: "The algorithm would have caught any issues. Trust the system." Trust the system. Those 3 words would be his epitaph. I opened a new dashboard in his beloved platform, my fingers moving with surgical precision. If Ethan wanted to worship at the altar of automation, I'd craft him a false idol worth genuflecting to. The report I built was a masterpiece of plausible impossibility. Revenue projections that started believable, but subtly compounded into fantasy. Our struggling retail REIT, showing 23% returns instead of the actual 2.3% loss, a simple decimal point error that his system's formatting would mask beautifully. Debt ratios inverted to show strength where weakness festered. But the pièce de résistance was the derivatives section. I created phantom gains on interest rate swaps that didn't exist, showing $47 million in profits where we actually held $15 million in losses. The numbers were so egregiously wrong that any first-year analyst would catch them if they actually looked at the source data instead of the pretty visualizations. I wrapped it all in Ethan's favorite package gradient-filled charts that shifted from red to green like a Christmas miracle. Animated transitions that drew the eye away from the absurdity of the underlying figures, and executive summary boxes with reassuring upward arrows. The entire fraud took me 6 hours to build. I embedded it deep in the system, tagged with enough metadata to trace its creation directly back to my login. If anyone investigated, they'd find my fingerprints all over it. That was the point. When questioned, I'd simply claim it was a test file, a stress test of our controls, never meant for distribution. Would anyone in their right mind send such obviously fabricated numbers up the chain? Thursday arrived gray and bitter. Chicago wind rattling the windows like angry creditors. I submitted the report at 4:47 p.m., titling it with deliberate vagueness, Q3 Comprehensive Performance Review, Final Dashboard Version. The email was crafted with psychological precision. Ethan, per your directive to embrace full automation, I've prepared our Q3 comprehensive review entirely within the new system. The results reflect the transformative power of your methodologies. Truly eye-opening numbers that showcase what Silvercrest Capital can achieve with progressive leadership. I've highlighted the exceptional performance in our alternative investments and derivatives portfolios. The board will be impressed by these breakthrough metrics. As you've instructed, I've disabled all manual verification steps to demonstrate complete faith in the automated platform. Best regards, Lauren. Every word was a breadcrumb leading to his vanity. Transformative, progressive, exceptional, breakthrough. I might as well have covered it in honey. I watched through the glass walls as he opened the email 20 minutes later. His face lit up as he scanned the dashboard on his screen. Fingers swiping through the slides on his tablet, he didn't open a single detail view, didn't click through to the source data, didn't question why our worst-performing fund was suddenly showing returns that would make Warren Buffett weep with envy. Instead, he forwarded it to his assistant with a note I could see him typing, "Package this for the board presentation. No changes needed." By 6 p.m., he was gone, whistling as he headed to the elevators. I remained at my desk, staring at the email confirmation in my sent folder. One click, that's all it had taken. One click from a man who'd dismantled 15 years of financial safeguards in the name of innovation. My phone buzzed, a text from Janet. "Did you see what Ethan just sent to the board? These numbers can't be right." I typed back, "I'm sure Ethan verified everything. He's very confident in the new system." The die was cast. In 18 hours, Ethan Cross would stand before the board of directors and present my fiction as fact. He'd stake his reputation on numbers that violated basic accounting principles, let alone reality. I closed my laptop and gathered my things with deliberate calm. In the elevator, I caught my reflection again, no longer hollow-eyed, but sharp with purpose. Tomorrow would be Judgment Day, not mine his. Friday morning arrived wrapped in unseasonable sunshine, as if the universe appreciated the irony of what was about to unfold. I arrived at 7:30 a.m., my usual time, and settled into my office with deliberate normalcy, coffee, black, market reports on one screen, emails on another. Just another day at Silvercrest Capital. Except for the email sitting in my inbox like a lit fuse, FWQ3 board presentation, final approved. Ethan had not only signed off on my fabrication, he'd added his own executive summary, taking credit for the remarkable turnaround in our portfolio performance. He'd even created a new slide titled, "The Cross Method Revolutionizing Financial Excellence," that highlighted the impossible derivatives gains as proof of his strategic genius. I sipped my coffee and archived everything, every email, every approval, every digital signature time-stamped and preserved. My In Case of Audit Apocalypse folder gained a new subfolder, Detonation Day. At 9:45 a.m., I watched Ethan stride past my office toward the executive conference room, his entire demeanor radiating confidence. He'd chosen a new Armani suit for the occasion, steel gray with a power tie the color of money. His assistant trailed behind, arms full of bound presentations featuring my fictional numbers in glossy, professional glory. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. I busied myself with routine tasks, maintaining the facade of normalcy while my pulse drummed a countdown. At 10:15, my desk phone rang. "Lauren, Margaret from Executive Support," her voice tight. "The board is requesting your immediate presence in the conference room." "Of course, I'll be right there." I gathered my laptop and the real reports, the ones Ethan had dismissed as archaeological artifacts. My hands were perfectly steady as I walked the marble hallway toward the boardroom. Through the frosted glass, I could see the silhouettes of directors bent over documents, gesticulating with increasing animation. The moment I opened the door, the atmosphere hit me like a physical force. 12 board members sat around the polished table, faces ranging from confused to furious. At the far end, CEO Richard Blackstone's expression could have frozen helium. Ethan stood by the presentation screen, his confidence evaporating like morning dew in Death Valley. "Lauren," Richard's voice cut through the tension. "Thank you for joining us. We seem to have some discrepancies in the quarterly report." I took the offered seat, noting how Ethan's eyes darted between me and the door like a trapped animal. "What kind of discrepancies?" "This report shows our derivatives portfolio up $47 million. Board member Harrison Wells, former Goldman Sachs partner, held up the glossy presentation like contaminated evidence. But Tom Chen from our audit committee just informed us we're actually down $15 million. That's a $62 million difference." I arranged my features into professional concern. "That's significant. May I see the report you're referencing?" Richard slid the bound presentation across the table. I flipped through it with theatrical care, letting my frown deepen with each page. "This is the report I submitted through the new automated system, per Mr. Cross's directive. But these numbers," I pulled out my laptop, "they don't match my source data at all." "What?" Ethan's voice cracked. "That's impossible. The system you insisted we use without manual verification." I opened my real files, the ones I'd painstakingly maintained despite his mockery. "Here's the actual data, every trade, every position, every P&L calculation." The room erupted. Board members compared my real numbers to Ethan's presentation, their voices rising with each discovered discrepancy. The REIT showing 23% returns when it was hemorrhaging money. The phantom interest rate swaps. Revenue projections that defied mathematical possibility. "Ethan," Richard's voice had dropped to sub-zero. "Did you review these numbers before presenting them to this board?" The system generated them. Lauren submitted them. He pointed at me, desperation leaking through his executive veneer. "This is sabotage." "Mr. Cross," Harrison Wells interrupted, his tone that of a man who'd seen every corporate excuse invented. "Are you telling us you presented numbers to this board without verifying them, without understanding them, without even questioning why our worst-performing assets were suddenly showing impossible returns?" The silence stretched like piano wire. Ethan's mouth opened and closed, but no words emerged. His Armani suit suddenly looked like a costume on a child playing dress-up. "Lauren," Richard turned to me, "did you intentionally submit false numbers?" I met his gaze steadily. "I submitted a test file to see if our new system had any verification controls. I assumed Mr. Cross would catch the obvious errors when he reviewed it. Any basic review would have revealed these numbers were impossible." I paused, letting the implications sink in. I never imagined he would present untested, unverified data directly to the board. The temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Every eye turned to Ethan, who stood frozen by the screen showing his cross-method slide. My fictional numbers displayed in damning detail. "I trusted the system," he whispered. "You trusted nothing." Richard stood, his chair scraping against marble like a judge's gavel. "You abdicated your responsibility. You presented lies to this board. You nearly destroyed our credibility with stakeholders." The execution was swift and surgical. Ethan was instructed to leave the premises immediately, pending a full investigation. Security would escort him to collect his personal items. His credentials were revoked before he even reached the door. As he passed my chair, he stopped. For a moment, his eyes met mine, and I saw the exact moment he understood. The trap, the bait, the perfect corporate kill. I held his gaze, my expression neutral as Switzerland, then he was gone. Footsteps echoing down the marble hallway like a funeral march. The boardroom door hadn't even closed behind Ethan when Harrison Wells leaned forward, his weathered hands steepled. "Richard, we need to understand the full scope of this disaster. How many decisions has Cross made based on this compromised system?" "Every portfolio adjustment since October," Director Patricia Chang answered, her tablet glowing with data streams. "Every risk assessment, every report to our institutional investors." The blood drained from Richard's face. Around the table, board members began pulling up their devices, cross-referencing past reports. The full magnitude of Ethan's incompetence unfurled like a toxic bloom. "Lauren," Richard's voice cut through the rising panic, "we need a complete audit. Can you..." I've been maintaining parallel records, I interrupted smoothly, opening my laptop. Every transaction, every decision point, with source documentation. I pulled up my meticulously organized folders. I can show you exactly where the automated system diverged from reality. You've been keeping shadow books. Director Michael Shannon, silver-haired and sharp as a Swiss banker, studied me with new interest, despite Cross's direct orders. I believed it was my fiduciary duty to maintain accurate records, regardless of internal politics. I clicked through to my evidence files. Here's October 15th. The system showed emerging markets up 3.2%. Actual was 2.7%. October 22nd, a completely omitted margin call on commodities. November 8th. Dear God, Patricia breathed, her face illuminated by her screen. The compound effect. We've been reporting phantom gains to the SEC. The room erupted. Board members shouted over each other. Phones buzzed with urgent calls from compliance, legal, investor relations. Through it all, I remained an island of calm, methodically presenting the real numbers that Ethan had mocked as archaeological artifacts. Enough. Richard's fist hit the table, silencing the chaos. Lauren, I need you to walk us through everything, every discrepancy, every override, every moment that charlatan ignored risk protocols. For the next hour, I laid bare the full extent of the damage. The boardroom transformed into a war room, my evidence projected on the main screen while directors frantically calculated exposure. With each revelation, their faces grew grimmer. The real estate portfolio is the worst, I explained, pulling up Janet's ignored warnings. Ethan suppressed alerts about balloon payments coming due. We have $180 million in commercial properties that need immediate refinancing, but he's been showing them as performing assets. How did we not catch this sooner? Demanded Director James Hartley, whose family foundation was Silvercrest's second-largest shareholder. Because Mr. Cross systematically dismantled our verification protocols, I replied. He convinced senior management that manual checks were outdated. He marginalized anyone who questioned the new system myself. Janet from risk, Tom from internal audit. He created a culture where questioning him meant being labeled obsolete. And this report today, Harrison gestured at the discredited presentation. Walk me through exactly how this happened. I met his gaze directly. I submitted test data through the system Mr. Cross mandated we use exclusively. The numbers were obviously impossible. Any review would have caught them. I assumed he would verify before presenting to the board. I paused. I was wrong. You set a trap, Michael stated. It wasn't a question. I tested whether our CFO would perform the most basic due diligence before presenting to the board. My voice remained professionally neutral. He failed. Silence descended, heavy with implication. Several board members exchanged glances, a mixture of anger at Ethan and grudging respect for my maneuver. Richard, Patricia finally spoke. We need to file amended reports with the SEC immediately. Contact our external auditors, and she looked at me. We need someone who actually understands our positions to lead the cleanup. Richard nodded slowly. Lauren, I'm appointing you interim CFO. Effective immediately. Your first priority is damage control. We need real numbers on everything portfolios, risk exposure, regulatory filings. Can you handle it? The weight of vindication settled on my shoulders like a coronation robe. I'll need full access to all systems and complete authority to rebuild our controls. Done, Richard stood, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. I want a preliminary report by market. Open Monday. Board members. Clear your calendars. We'll be in crisis sessions all weekend. As directors filed out, phones pressed to ears, Harrison paused beside my chair. That was a dangerous game you played. Lauren, if Cross had been even marginally competent, then he would have deserved to be CFO, I finished. But he wasn't. Harrison studied me for a long moment, then smiled a sharp, knowing expression. Remind me never to underestimate you, Ms. Mitchell. After he left, I sat alone in the boardroom, surrounded by the debris of Ethan's ambition. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago sprawled beneath clouded skies. Somewhere out there, Ethan Cross was discovering that his key card no longer worked, that his corporate credit cards were frozen, that his 3-month tenure at Silvercrest had just become a career-ending catastrophe. I opened my phone to find dozens of messages from colleagues who'd witnessed his security escort. The last was from Janet. "The witch is dead. Long live the queen." I allowed myself one moment of satisfaction, then opened my laptop. There was work to do, real work, with real numbers, verified by real controls. The kingdom Ethan had tried to build on digital sand had collapsed, but the foundation I'd protected remained solid. Time to rebuild, properly, this time. The knock on the boardroom door came at 11:47 a.m. Through the frosted glass, I could see Ethan's silhouette flanked by 2 security guards. Richard nodded to Margaret, who opened the door a fraction. "Mr. Blackstone." Ethan's voice had lost all its marketing polish. "Please, 5 minutes. Let me explain." Richard's jaw tightened. Several board members shifted uncomfortably, but Harrison Wells raised a hand. "Let him speak. I want to hear this." Security allowed Ethan to step just inside the doorway. His perfect hair was disheveled, his power tie askew. The transformation from corporate peacock to plucked chicken was complete. "This was a setup," he began, his eyes finding mine with desperate fury. "Lauren deliberately—" "Stop." Richard's voice could have cut glass. "Before you continue, understand that anything you say will be recorded and potentially used in legal proceedings. Now, are you actually claiming that Ms. Mitchell forced you to present unverified data to this board?" Ethan's mouth worked silently, the trap within the trap becoming clear. Any accusation would be an admission of his own incompetence. "The system," he tried again, weaker now. "It was supposed to be foolproof." "Foolproof," Michael Shannon repeated, his tone dripping contempt. "Mr. Cross, do you know what we call executives who rely on foolproof systems without understanding them, former executives?" Patricia Chang pulled up her tablet. "I've been reviewing your email history. Mr. Cross, on November 2nd, Janet Morrison warned you about risk flags in the real estate portfolio. You responded, and I quote, 'The algorithm knows better than your spreadsheets.' On November 9th, Tom Chen raised concerns about derivatives reporting. Your response, 'Stop living in the past.'" Each quote hit Ethan like a physical blow. His shoulders sagged with the weight of his own words being weaponized against him. "But the most damning," Patricia continued, "is this email to all department heads on November 15th. Manual verification is now forbidden. Anyone caught maintaining shadow records will face disciplinary action. Trust the system or find another job." I was trying to modernize. "You were playing with toys you didn't understand," Harrison interrupted. "And when experienced professionals tried to warn you, you threatened their careers." I pulled up my laptop one final time. "Mr. Cross, can you explain this derivatives position?" I displayed one of the phantom trades from the report. It shows a $15 million gain on interest rate swaps. Which counterparty did we trade with? His face went ashen. The system generated. "The position doesn't exist," I stated flatly. "It's a complete fabrication. The system didn't generate it, I did. As a test, which you would have known if you'd spent 30 seconds reviewing the source data." "You admit it." Ethan lurched forward, pointing at me. "She admits she falsified." "I created a test file," I corrected calmly. "Clearly marked in the system logs as a simulation, never intended for distribution. You're the one who bypassed every control, ignored every warning, and presented fiction as fact to the board of directors of a multi-billion-dollar investment firm." The room fell silent. Ethan stood there, fingers still extended accusingly, looking like a man who'd just realized he'd brought a butter knife to a gunfight. Richard stood slowly, his presence filling the room. "Mr. Cross, let me be very clear. You will leave this building immediately. You will not speak to the media. You will not contact any employees. You will not disparage Silvercrest Capital or any of its personnel. Our legal team will be in touch regarding the terms of your separation and the ongoing SEC investigation." "SEC investigation." Ethan's voice cracked. "Oh yes," Patricia smiled, without warmth. "Filing false financial statements is a federal crime. I hope you have a good lawyer." The security guard stepped forward. Ethan looked around the room one last time, searching for any sign of sympathy. He found none. Even Bradley from Treasury, his most eager acolyte, wouldn't meet his eyes. As they escorted him out, he turned back one final time. "This isn't over, Lauren." I met his gaze steadily. "Yes, Mr. Cross, it is." The door closed with a definitive click. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Harrison Wells began a slow, sardonic clap. "Brava, Ms. Mitchell, absolutely textbook." "That was brutal," James Hartley muttered. "Necessary, but brutal." Richard returned to his seat, looking older but somehow relieved. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just witnessed why experience matters, why process matters, why the boring, meticulous work of verification matters." He looked at me. "Lauren, I owe you an apology. I should have listened when you raised concerns about Cross." "The important thing is we caught it before it went public," I replied. "Now we need to focus on remediation." "Agreed," Richard straightened. "As of this moment, Lauren Mitchell is our interim CFO with full authority to implement whatever controls she deems necessary. Any objections?" Silence. Then, one by one, the board members nodded their approval. "Good. Lauren, what do you need?" I pulled up my prepared list. First, immediate reinstatement of all manual verification protocols. Second, a forensic audit of every transaction since October 1st. Third, Janet Morrison promoted to Senior VP of Risk Management, and Tom Chen to VP of Internal Audit. They tried to prevent this disaster and deserve recognition. Done. What else? I'll need a team working through the weekend to prepare amended filings. And I paused, allowing myself a small smile. We should probably retire Mr. Cross's revolutionary dashboard system. "Bury it," Richard commanded. "Bury it deep." As the board members began organizing the crisis response, I closed my laptop with quiet satisfaction. Ethan Cross had walked into my trap, signed his name to it, and gift-wrapped it for the board. His hubris had been his downfall, aided by my patience and his own words. The culmination of 3 months of silent documentation, careful planning, and strategic restraint had taken less than 2 hours to execute. Surgical, precise, devastating. Justice served ice cold, with a side of SEC investigation. The boardroom emptied slowly, directors murmuring in small groups as they processed the morning's carnage. Richard lingered by the window, staring out at the Chicago skyline as if seeing it for the first time. "Lauren," he said without turning, "stay a moment." I closed my laptop and waited. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished table where Ethan's dreams had died. "In 30 years of running this firm," Richard continued, "I've seen every type of corporate warfare imaginable. Hostile takeovers, insider trading, embezzlement schemes that would make your head spin." He turned to face me. "But this was art." "It was necessary," I replied simply. "Yes, it was." He moved to pour himself water from the crystal pitcher, his hands surprisingly steady. "But most people would have just documented and reported. You orchestrated a complete destruction." He threatened to fire anyone who maintained proper controls. He humiliated experienced professionals. He put the entire firm at risk for the sake of his ego. I stood, gathering my things. I simply gave him the rope. And he hung himself with enthusiasm. Richard almost smiled. "The SEC will crucify him. His career in finance is over. By Monday, every firm on the street will know what happened here." My phone buzzed. A text from Janet. "Emergency meeting in 20 to start cleanup. Also, the whole floor knows you're a legend." "I should go," I said. "We have 72 hours to prepare amended filings." "Lauren," Richard's voice stopped me at the door. "The interim tag on your CFO title. Consider it removed. The job is yours if you want it." I nodded once, professionally. "I'll need to rebuild the entire reporting structure." "Whatever you need, just..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Try not to destroy any more executives. My heart can't take it." I walked back through the halls of Silvercrest Capital, the same halls I'd walked for 15 years, but everything felt different now. Conversations stopped as I passed. Junior analysts stared. Someone had already updated the nameplate outside the CFO's office. Ethan's name replaced with a temporary sign reading L. Mitchell. Inside what had been Ethan's office 3 hours ago, I found his assistant boxing up personal items. A motivational poster reading "Disrupt or Die" lay face down on the desk. "Ms. Mitchell," she stammered. "I was just—" "Take your time, Sarah." I moved to the window, looking out at the city below. "And when you're done, please set up meetings with all department heads for this afternoon. We have a lot of work ahead." She nodded and hurried out. Alone in the office, I allowed myself one moment of complete, unguarded satisfaction. 3 months of mockery, condescension, and threats had led to this. Ethan Cross had thought he was the future. That experience was obsolete, that flashy presentations could replace fundamental competence. He'd learned otherwise. My phone lit up with notifications, emails from colleagues, LinkedIn messages from headhunters who'd already heard, texts from friends at other firms. The financial world is small, and news travels at the speed of light. By market close, everyone would know that Ethan Cross had been fired for presenting fabricated numbers to his board, numbers that his own interim CFO had created as a test. The beauty was in its simplicity. I'd given him every opportunity to catch the errors. Any CFO worth their salt would have spotted them immediately. But Ethan had been so blinded by arrogance, so convinced of his own brilliance, that he'd signed his name to obvious fiction and presented it with pride. One anonymous message stood out among the others. From a number I didn't recognize, Ku Dan Huan Hao. Perfect strike, indeed. I deleted it and turned to face my new domain. The real work started now, rebuilding what Ethan had torn down, restoring confidence, protecting the firm and its investors. It would take months to fully repair the damage. But first, I had 72 hours to prepare those SEC filings. I sat down at the desk, opened my laptop, and began typing. Outside, Chicago hummed with the energy of a million ambitions, a million schemes, a million dreams of corporate glory. Somewhere out there, Ethan Cross was learning that in the world of high finance, competence isn't optional, it's everything. And somewhere in this building, a folder labeled "In Case of Audit Apocalypse" sat safely archived, its purpose fulfilled. You never know when meticulous documentation might save your career or end someone else's. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, and I smiled. Checkmate. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate revenge. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of financial justice, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Lauren's position? Let me know in the comments.